The clock is ticking for the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to respond to a stay issued by the Supreme Court of Canada on the planned culling of hundreds of ostriches in BC. For the latest on where things stand, let's bring in CTV's Jeremie Charron live in Ottawa. Jeremie, good morning. The CFIA's deadline to respond to the Supreme Court's stay on the culling of around 400 ostriches BC is today. Can you break down what we know so far?
Yeah, actually, to your point, the clock is ticking. We're getting closer to a decision here. The CFIA has to respond to that stay by the Supreme Court today. Of course, the ostrich farmers are trying to avoid a cull of nearly 400 ostriches. The appeal for that cull order has been tested at the federal court level, at the Federal Court of Appeals, and the farmers have failed at both of those lower court levels. Now, of course, they have pushed this to the Supreme Court, and as you've touched on, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has to respond today to that stay order. Then the farm will have about 2 days to issue its final response before we then await a decision from the Supreme Court whether or not to hear this case about the ostriches. And of course, this has gone on for some time now. Last week, the CFIA took over control of the ostrich farm. The owner of the farm and her daughter were arrested after refusing to leave the enclosure. They were since released and allowed to return home, but will not be allowed to go back into the enclosure. So the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has been in control of the ostriches and the farm. They are so far adhering to the stay, the court-ordered stay, and are not moving ahead with the call, but will be awaiting a decision by the Supreme Court whether or not to hear this stay or to hear this case rather before moving ahead with their decision to cull these ostriches.
Jeremie, this situation, as we know, has garnered so much attention in Canada, US, internationally as well. Talk to us about some of the voices and what are advocates arguing.
Yeah, look, I mean, this goes back quite some time. Certainly, December of last year, 70 birds roughly were killed by the avian flu, and standard procedure after that is to cull the rest of the herd. The farmers have been fighting that cull order ever since, as I've touched on, at multiple levels in the courts. And what we've seen happen since then is the farmers are arguing in the courts that the birds have since then become healthier, and are scientifically valuable at this point, and they believe that the cull order should be called off. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency believes that that is not the case. They are arguing that the ostriches were infected with a more lethal avian flu, and that the infection and reinfection, the risk of reinfection, could still remain among these birds, despite the fact that the farm and its supporters believe that these are now healthy birds. So, both sides continue to argue their points. Of course, this is kind of the last effort for the farmers to save these birds. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency believes that the right decision is still to move ahead with the call, but are waiting at this point to whether or not the Supreme Court will hear this case and the appeal from the farm before moving forward. But this really is kind of the last-ditch effort by these farmers to try and save their ostriches. And as we touched on earlier, we're down to kind of the last few days here. The CFIA will have to respond today, and then the farm will have about 2 days to respond. And in pretty short order, experts suggest the Supreme Court will make a decision on whether or not to hear this case.
Right. CTV's Jeremie Charron in Ottawa. Jeremie, thank you for this update.